Welcome to the fastest daf in town, today on Masechtas Chulin Daf Lamed Beis. We are going to begin on Lamed Beis and Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Nofel Sakin V'Higbiyah. So this is going to be talking about Shehiyah, the prohibition or passing the shechita when there's a delay in it. So let's say the knife fell down and you picked it up during this time, so there was a delay there, or nafal kela v'hegbian, let's say your clothes fell down and you picked it up in the middle of the shechita, or for that matter, hishchiz es asakin, let's say you were sharpening the knife before the shechita, v'off, and then it says Rashi, this yageya, it stopped going, right? It wasn't strong. It wasn't didn't have the capacity of the shecht. Someone else comes and shechs. So in other words, these are all delays. So the Mishnah says, if you waited long enough, apparently enough to be able to do an entire shechita, it's possible. Actually, the amount of time it would take to examine. And the Gemara is going to explain what that means. So, says the Gemara, so my kedei shchita, what does that mean? So, Omarav kedei shchitas behema cheres. Enough time that you would be able to take another animal and to shecht it. So Rashi says, don't think it means just to finish your shchita. So let's say you're halfway done, so then it shouldn't take you that much time to finish it. No, shehiyah is enough to take another animal. It's a little bit longer. Amalei Rav Kahana Ravasi Rav is Kedei Shchitas Behema V'Of. Is it the amount of time to get, if you're shechting an animal to get another animal, or if you're shechting a bird to get another bird, even when you're shechting behema, enough time to get a bird, which obviously would take less time. Says Rashi, O Dilma Filu B'chtech Shchitas Behema Misharin and L'Shehiyah Shchitas Oaf. Actually, Pufakert. That when you're shechting an oaf, the amount of time it would take to get a behema, so therefore it would take more time, so it's actually a kula. So Mahu Lo Havi Bedichna Be Kechabibi. You should not feel comfortable with my beloved one. The Shalit have asked this question. It says Rashi, Lo Haisa Daiti Gasa Bedoidi. My connection with my loved one is not so haughty. I didn't have I wasn't happy about this type of a question. Okay, apparently this was not the greatest question. So apparently it's not so clear. Rav holds that when it comes to a bird, the amount of time to get another bird. It's actually this longer period of time that if you're shechting a bird and you delay, the amount of time to get an animal, that's a cool. So again, that would be a kula for the bird, the amount of time it would take to get a behema. So she is always the amount of time to get another behema. There's a longer amount of time, the amount of time it would take to actually go and get another animal and shecht it. Not that it's right here. Yavi, I feel ma'alma. I don't understand. So if you're talking about getting an animal, there's no animals where I live in Long Island. So does that mean I have to drive an hour out of my way? So she is an hour, and then maybe if you lived on a farm, it's only a few seconds. So how can you have different measurements? So my papa, it's talking about Oimedes, the animal standing right here. Lahatil, and all you need to do is push it down. And that's the only thing it's missing. So that Ika Benayu. That is, says Rashi, Ika ben Rabbi Chanina or Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan Mishar B'Shchita L'Chuda. He only looks at the shchita. Yochanan boy hatol of a shchita. He requires not just shchita, but for you to put it down. So, but again, it's not that much of a difference. Ami b'marava. So they said in Eretz Yisrael, Mishmei the Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, Kedei shegbiena, enough time for you to lift it up, v'yarbitzen, and lay it down, v'yishchait. Daka l'daka, v'gasa l'gasa, depending on a small animal or a big one. Omer Rava hashayich b'sakin raw fil kol yom kula kshera. If you have this dull knife, you can keep on doing it. The issue of shehiyah is not that the shechita took a long time to do. You can do a long shechita as long as you're not stopping. The problem is the stopping in the middle. So boy Rava shiyos mahu shiyos refenu. Let's say you stopped multiple times, but each one was less than the amount of time it takes to get an animal or to shecht another animal. So the question is, what's the din over there? If you did it multiple times, that would be mitzaref, and v'tivshila mididei. So apparently, you should be able to answer this directly, because as Rashi says, sheikh v'sakin raw, we see directly if you have a bad knife, amalu mitzarfi. Obviously, it's not mitzaref, right? So no hasam b'delay shah, because there was no delay. In other words, since there was no delay at all, even though it was a weak knife, that's okay if it's a weak knife. You didn't stop. However, the problem is when you're dealing with a situation where you're constantly stopping, small stops, what the din is. Was that case? Says Rashi. Shachtan harayv. You shecht the majority. V'shah b'miyat achron. The end, the small miyat, you didn't shecht right away, and there was a delay of a gomer shchita. So ma'u miyamrin and kivan the avad beruba. Since you already shechted the majority, is kasher, it's good. What do we say that since you went back and completed it, it's still considered like one shechita? Okay, so that is the question. Okay. Let's look at question 13. Ma'u shir hashias livsul ba'of of a hema kadesh kafi shepsak Rashi l'chumra. So, question 13, with regard to a bird, it's also shchitas bird. By behema daka, it's bechnei shchitas behema daka. Behema gas bechnei shchitas behema gasa. Basically, what it's saying is that it's not that it's always the shehi of a behema. We look at the animal itself that you're shechting, and therefore it'll depend based on that animal that you're shechting, what that din is. Okay, let's look at question TB3. Question is, Shoba miyat kama bisimanim o b'miyat batra mahadin. So if you did shehiyah at the miyat kama, what's the din, and how about the miyat batra? So we see clearly over here, shoba miyat simanim mahu teku, right? So we know that already, that it's a teku if you already shecht the robe. Apparently, if you didn't shecht the robe, so then obviously it's telling what we said. Let me see what I wrote. Shoba miyat kama machmirin imzeh behema gasa. Hazman lishchet behema gasa cheres. Imzeh behema daka hazman lishchet behema daka cheres. Over im shachet kvaras harov simanim. Umeikra din ashchita kasher gemar mashim yesh iser shehiyah b'oifen zem upaskinan l'chumra. Let's see, vamrinan teku, which seems like we're machmir, right? Let's look at this Rashi, actually. It's probably this Rashi here. Teku. L'chumra ubemiyat kama o gregeres la midi ovid. So it was a miyat. What did you do? V'lo shehiyaki. It's not considered to be shehiyah. So maybe it's pumfaker, okay? V'im the veshet inakvaso b'mashahu. If you made a hole in the veshet, in which the smallest amount will be a treifa, b'manushach. The kivan de shah Ozile Maisa Kalma, Vahavile Neke Baalma Vatarfa. Venira, Da Sheikhet Rov Simonim, Vahoilich Miyada Vaoiv Shal Lomos, Osul Asalakta, Chamiyat Batar Shchita, the Mutav Shiakal Savar at Sakin, O Yamtin ad Shiyamus. Okay. So anyway, that's the this Rashi. It's only Rashi. Okay. Anyway, so Rashi says we're L'chomer. All right. Let's see the next Mishnah. Okay. So that was Shehir. Says Mishnah, Shachet as a Veshet. Let's say you shechted the esophagus, through Pasuk as a Gregorus, and then you pulled out the kana, the windpipe. Says Rashi, that's Hainu Iker. We're talking about the issue of Iker. We're talking about a behema in which it's two simonim. O Pasuk as a Gregorus, you ripped out the Gregorus first, which is Iker. Shachet as a Veshet. That certainly should be problematic. O Shachet Echmehen, you shechted one, v'himtin lo ad shemeta, and then you waited until it died. O shehichlid es asakin, you burrowed the knife tachas hasheni, between the two simanim. Upasku Rabbi Yishave b'omer nevelu, Rabbi Kiva omer treifa. So it's definitely not kosher. The question is, what's the status of this animal? Is it a treifa or is it nevelu? And it's important to distinguish the two, because in the nevela there's din tuma. So it's a machlokas. Kiva says it's a treif, it's not tamei. So klal Rabbi Yishavi mishum Rabbi Yeshua. He said the following general rule: Kol shenifsala b'shchitasa nevela. Anytime that it becomes possible due to the shchita, then it has the status of nevela. Kol shechitasa karoi. Unless you did the shchita properly, everything was good, but then you inspect the lungs, and there's sichas in the lungs, so then we say, v'davar acher garmla lifsel treva. B'hoidel Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva agrees to that. So, again, if the shchita was good, and then you inspected, and you saw there was something wrong with it, so it's a treva. However, if there's an issue with the shchita itself, that's an available. Says the Gemara, Shachat es avashet v'chul. V'hoidel Rabbi Kiva, and then the Mishnah agreed. Raminhu, elu treifas bebehemos. So we're going to eventually get to the third parak in about 10 blot. On Mem Beis, it's going to talk about the dinim of treifa, what constitutes treifas. So as we continue to Lamed Beis and Beis, so we say nikuvas haveshet. Let's say there's a hole in the esophagus, upoisekes agregris, or that there's a ripping of the gorgeris. So what's the question? Says Rashi, alma treifahi, vam devela. It's clearly it's a treifa, right? It says elu treifas, right? It says it's treifa. Rabbi Kiva, hahi the elu treifas mani. Okay, Rabbi Kiva must not have been chayzer. So how do we understand this? So Merabu kasha, kancha shachat l'basay pasak, kancha pasak l'basay shachat. So as we said, if the shechita was good, and then you discovered something wrong, then it's a treifa. However, if let's say it was already bad before the shechita, so then it's an nevela, right? So shachat will say pasak 1 second. If you shechted it first, and then afterwards there was the tearing of the pipe, nifseles b'shchita. So the shechita is not good. Passes it. So pasak will say shachat. If pasak first, then shechted ki davar acher garmla, and then lissel damya. So because since you already caused problems and then you did the shechita, so it has the status of a treif, at least in the Havamina. Eis v'Rabbi Achabar Huna Rava shachat as havashet, pasak as a gregorus, pasak as a gregorus, shachat as a gregorus, havashet nevela. So in either situation it should be a nevela, not a treifa. So aim of a kfar shach, it means like this: the kfar shachat, that's a veshet mikara. It means that you already shechted the veshet from before. So that's when it becomes a treifa. So I'm going to lay state chuvas with Chada, first two problems. Hainu kamaisa, sounds like the same thing as above. Furthermore, hantanan v'yachach, it says, and then afterwards, sounds like in that particular order. Now, Omarava, elosuros katani. All it doesn't really mean treifas, it means elosuros. V'yesh behen nevel, so yeshim and treifas. So this case of nekuvas aveshin and besekis agrigras is a case of nevel. It's not necessarily talking about a case of treifa. Even though it says elohim treifas, but really these things are usher, and some of them are taka nevelos, but some are nevel or treifas. So v'lakshav nami de chizkia. So one thing include chizkia. The other chizkia also gistra nevela, that if you rip it in half, then the animal's a nevela. V'lichshav nami. Once you also mentioned Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer, notla yerech v'chol shla nevelos. We said if you remove the thigh bone and there's a cavity in that space, that's a nevela. So kikata nevela dolmatam machayim. We only say it when it's not tummy from life. Well, it's alive. Of nevela, the matam machayim lo katani. But when it comes to nevela, which is matami, even while it's alive, it doesn't mention it. Shimon ben Alaka Shemer. What does that mean? Shechting in the place of the cut. If you shechted in that exact place, it becomes a psul in the shlita. If you cut somewhere else, so Yom Rav Shimon ben Lakish, how does he say that? Remember Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish said, Shachan as a kana v'yachach nikva reich shera. If you check the kana, then afterwards there was a hole in the lungs, it's kosher. Alma, kaman demancha bidikula dami. It's like it was put in the basket. So achinami kaman demancha bidikula dami. So it shouldn't be a problem. Elam Rav Chia Baraboy Rav Yochanan Lokasha kan kainam chazar kanach chazara. So the one case is before Reish Lakish said his din, and the one's afterwards, in the Rabbi Kiva rather. So Rabbi Kiva initially Taka said treifa, like our Mishnah. In one case it says treifa when it comes to the veil, so he was chayzer, and that's it. He changed his mind. Okay. Umishna was husband kaima, and we don't change the Mishnah. Okay. So the lung is connected to the kana, to the windpipe. So if it got punctured in the lung after the shechita of the kana, it's okay. So too, if the robe was cut, it's like it's not there. This was before the veshet was cut. The second siman still is kosher. Gufon Rav Shimon Lakish shachas akana v'achan nikva harayik shera. Rav Loyim Rav Shimon Lakish el bereya. He always says this by the lung. As I said, because the lung is attached to the windpipe of a b'neimayim low, but not to the innards. So Maska Rav Zera Yachash Yaldo Basimon Treifa Katarta Mali Bereya Mali b'neimayim. What difference does it make? The Hadame Rav Zera, the boy Rav Zera, he asked a question. Nikvu b'neimayim. Let's say there's a hole in the innards, bein simon l'siman ma'u. Mimasar simon l'rishon l'siman sheni l'tahara, meeting the veil. There's at least, because you did the first shechita properly, so it's not going to be the veil, only be a din treifa. Olo, yamrinan lav hainu de boy ilfa. It's a question that he asked. The haitzi uber es yadai. Let's say an animal takes his limb outside, bein simon l'siman ma. What is the din with regard to that ubar? Says the Gemara Lamadal Mimat starves Simon Rishon Simon Shana with the harm it didn't avail olo. Do we say that the fact that it stuck his hand out does that change its status of a nevela or a treifa? So Adkan Lui Boilan El Taharmi in nevela. Just to say that it's a treifa, it's not a nevela. Of a bachil asura, certainly you can't eat it. Amar Ravacha Barav Lavino Dilmo Elam Lohadabe, made he the retract. Rav Zera the Rav Kaimer, he's just saying his words, but he just doesn't hold of it. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Let's maybe see another question. Question 14. Elu beis min haminuyim min b'mishnas el trefas ain't a trefa el nevela. What are the two cases? It's not a nevela. It's not a trefa but a nevela. So psyches hagregris, that if you rip out the gregris, or the kivus of veshet, if there's a hole in the veshet, in the esophagus. So if there's some type of tear in the air pipe, or there's a hole in the veshet, in which is the esophagus. So that those are the two times that, as we said, it's maybe not a treifa, maybe it's only nevela, because it's not totally till the shechita. All right. Question. Let's see. That was question that. Let's put that over here. TA1. Nope. TB3. I did. Ashaycha behema benachal biyadayim v'suavois adkan.